Listen up. If you were to watch every single marriage video that we've saved on our reviews channel, you would notice 5 common traits that every single guy uses to win his wife back. In fact, when you discover these traits in today's video and then implement them in your daily life, I really don't see a way that your wife won't notice your changes, and you'll see cracks in her curiosities will start to pour out, and she will notice your growth. And that will open up the floodgates towards more love, intimacy, and connection again. I've seen it far too many times to not say it won't happen for you. So that's my promise for you today. There are 5 key skills. When developed, they have the power to completely melt your wife's defenses and transform her into a soft, loving, happy woman with you again. But the question is, if this is so easy, why don't most men do it? Because they make this first fatal flaw. They don't have a solid foundation in their mindset. Let me tell you through a story, okay? I was on my group call on Friday with the guys in the program, okay? And there was a client who just had to raise his hand. He had to share something. And then all the emotional vomit started coming out. He said, Josh, I'm really struggling right now, man. I'm holding frame. I'm doing what you say. I forgave her. I'm passing her tests. I'm just doing everything. And she just doesn't respect me anymore. And I don't know what to do because she recently changed her Facebook status. She took all the photos of me off. And now she's saying that she's going to move out. And the reason I really love my group so much is because I don't even have to respond to the guys most of the times. I can, but I like other guys teaching the other guys, especially the guys who are alumni and veterans in the program, because they've been through it 100 times. They've seen every single guy come through the program. They recognize the patterns. So I call on one of my favorite veterans in the program, and he said something like this. He goes, look, man, how long are you to the program? The guy was like, yeah, this is my 2nd week. He's like, right, look, you say you're doing good. You say you're not reacting. You say you're doing all these things, but the first thing you said is that you're struggling. And if you're doing all the right things, you wouldn't be struggling. See, the problem is that you're doing all these things for her, and she knows that, so she's not changing her reaction to you. Now, if you were doing it for yourself, then she would. That's why I love the program, because within a second, he got the answer he needed from another guy going through the same situation as him. Now, look, I don't blame the guy because it was his 2nd week into the program, and a lot of guys, they finally learned this process after going through the program and joining the group. It's why it's so powerful. But this is the first thing. Let me show you through a great analogy. All right, man. So here's the view, San Diego downtown. Anyways, see this building over here? They started building it right when I moved in, right? And let's say as they're building this building, it resembles your ability to win your wife back. You rebuild yourself, right? Little American flag there. Let's say when they built the building, they didn't put a solid foundation down there at all, right? No solid foundation. So when the first storm came along, or there's like a little earthquake, because I live in California, what would happen to that building, right? The building would fall down, right? And that's the thing, is that a lot of guys, they don't focus on the process. They focus on the outcome of getting their wife back instead of building themselves up. When the first earthquake or storm or inevitable test comes around, they fall and they crumble and they say they're struggling on a group call. Before we go on to the next point, I must emphasize the reason that you are becoming a better man and that you are trying to save the marriage is not for your wife. It is for yourself. It is for God. It is for the community. When you put the emphasis that I'm doing this for my wife, she will challenge you. When she doesn't give you the reactions, when she pulls away and then you crumble, she knows your changes are not going to last. And that's why you do it for yourself. All right, let's hop into the first principle, which is radical responsibility. Now let's look at 2 separate men here. Let's take one guy who has no responsibility. His victim score on the saboteur assessment is a 9.0, 10.0, right? And then you have another guy who owns everything. Let me put this in terms of something that you can understand. Let's say you have a fellow coworker and you have a project with this coworker and you guys just didn't meet the goal. Okay, you guys failed. In one reality, the victim, he starts blaming you for things. He says, oh, he had a really hard month this month. Things happened. He got sick, this and that. He minimizes the importance of the project anyways. It's not that big of a deal. He doesn't take one shred of responsibility. Would you still want to be on that person's team? Hell no. But let's say instead he comes to you, right? And he comes to a meeting and he raises his hand. He says something like, you know what, guys, this one's 100% on me. I should have done better in my role. I slacked and you guys deserve better and I deserve to be better for you guys. I'm not going to make any excuses. I just know next time it is going to be better. I'm going to do this on time. I'm going to lay out a 5-step plan. I'm going to give you a deadline with specific action steps. And this is why this is so important for myself and for the purpose of our company. And he spoke in that way, you'd at least be like, all right, I'll give you another chance. You see, most men struggle to take radical responsibility for one reason. And I'll share that reason at the very end of this video. But for now, begin to notice how you may subtly blame her or situations and things in your life outside of your control. This is me not saying that she isn't responsible for her actions, right? She is, absolutely. But it's her job to take ownership of those actions, not your job to point them out to her. She will own up to her part when she feels safe. And she doesn't feel safe when you're not taking responsibility. And as the man, you lead first. When you take responsibility, fully own it. Once she feels safe, she'll start to own her own actions. So just ask yourself, where can I take 1000% accountability the next coming months. The second principle is integral integrity. Now, speaking of safety, this next principle brings about your communication with her. The second principle is integral integrity. The idea here is that your words align with your actions, okay? They are consistent with each other. Now, this pattern of consistency creates safety in her. It creates safety in human beings. Imagine, for example, that I told you that I would make 2 videos a week on this channel, which I have been doing for years, right? But instead, for the past 2 years, I make 1 video 1 month, and then I take a 2-month break, and I'm not a man of my word, right? They're so sporadic. Now, let's imagine sometimes that I made random videos about golf, soccer, vlogs, gaming, making money, and it was all over the place. And imagine the thumbnails were just different colors and text and font, and it was just so scattered in your brain when you came to the channel. You wouldn't come back and watch me as much, right? You see, consistency creates safety and trust in our mammalian brains, okay, our reptile brains. Businesses and brands know this, which is why they're trying to be consistent as much as possible with their messaging, with their tones of their colors, with their music, with their spokespeople. And she can sense, like any other human being, that you are not matching your words with your actions. The man you say you are, the man you are presenting to the world is not consistent with your actions and your habits. As an example, I'm working with this very successful neurosurgeon. This guy is hyper intelligent, okay? However, he called himself out in our last session. He says, Josh, you know what? I notice when I tell you these things, but sometimes I don't back it with action. I have a really uncanny ability to just say something and just BS my way through stuff. And I was like, yeah, I do notice that, right? I do notice it. I was like, do you think it shows up with your wife? He goes, absolutely. You know, she's never really pointed it out in the way I just did, but I can tell that if that happened over time, that's probably one of the cracks in our foundation, one of the multiple nails in the coffin of our marriage. So the question is, how do you increase your integrity? The first step that I have my client do, I have every single client in our program do, you can't match your words with your actions and who you are with your actions unless you know who you are first. And so one of the first things we do is we have them point out their values that they are as a man. Imagine your values as being these signposts to when you come across obstacles in areas of your life and you don't know how to act, you lean on your values to choose the direction in which you want to go. As a simple example, let's say you wake up tired. You're like, oh, should I go to the gym today? We had a long day at work. Well, if you identify as having the value of discipline, you're like, you know what? If I'm a man of discipline, I'm going to go to the gym despite how I feel. Or if you're a man of compassion, in that moment where you would normally react, you're going to open your heart and have love for your children or for your wife instead of getting angry and defensive. This is almost a cheat code because you get to choose the type of man you want to be. And if you identify with those values, they will literally pull you towards the direction of those ideals and you'll become that man more consistently. But most people, they don't know who they are. Most guys, they don't understand their values. It's one of the most powerful exercises that you can do. I would choose 3 to 5 values and write them on the background of your phone, the background of your computer, so you can see them every single day so they can stay top of mind as you continue on in your life. And the second thing I would tell you to do is to look at past conflicts your wife has said. She's been giving little signs and little pieces of information across your marriage about how you've been inconsistent. Okay, so just try to think back to those issues. And if you can talk to her, she will even tell you, which would be a blessing. All right, let's jump into the third principle, which I call emotional competence. Now, emotional competence is emotional intelligence plus corrective action. For this principle, I was reading a post in our community and this guy owned up to his mistakes. And he basically said, as a lawyer, he always responds with logic over emotion. He could see that pattern in the communication with his wife. But what does responding with logic look like? And how does it play a role in your relationship and your disconnection with your wife? So I'll tell you through a personal story with my partner. Right? She was going through a big project at work and it was a long event she was putting on. And during that week where the event was, she was so stressed. And I remember being on the phone with her almost every day. And she is such a positive person, almost more positive than me. No one's really more positive than me, but very positive person. And throughout that phone conversation of the whole week, it was just complaining and venting and negativity. And immediately I can feel the discomfort of not liking that negativity within myself because of the way she feels. And I can feel my immediate reaction to want to fix her problem. Well, if you just said this to the girl, or if you just did this, or maybe she could go take a break, or maybe I had all these solutions pop up in my head. But because I teach this, I kind of know it a little bit. And I first paused. I took that pause. I took a deep breath. And I stopped myself from my immediate reaction of wanting to fix her emotions to make myself feel better. And I instead continued to validate her emotions, saying, man, that's really hard. Like, I don't know how you're going to get through this. Like, it's all on you. These people are quitting on you. Like, honestly, I'm really impressed by what you do. It was all genuine, by the way. I'm not just, blowing smoke, okay? Validating her emotions has to come from an authentic place. She could sense if you're just saying it, okay? So don't use it as some technique, but genuinely feel it. So, her negativity was getting to me, but I was still validating. I was validating. And then after about 20 minutes, it was like this flip switched. And she was like, okay, anyways, I feel better, and blah, 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 blah. And things were just great again, right? And that is the whole process. But you'll see in your masculine paradigm as a man, you're going to want to seek peace. You want to, when you're in conflict, when you're in problem, your job is to solve it as a man, which is why we create buildings, right? Which is why we create technology, which I'm talking to you through. It's amazing. But when it comes to connection with a person, you must lean into your feminine, which means you don't solve a problem, you simply connect. You understand and you reflect back how she feels. Now, how are you able to do this? Let me break down the steps of achieving emotional competence for more connection with her. So step number one, I recognize how I felt in that moment. So recognize your own emotions. Start to notice when you want to solve a problem. Recognize the thoughts and the feelings you have within yourself before you react to them. The second thing I did was I didn't immediately respond to her venting, right? I took a pause and I took a deep breath. You give a nonverbal affirmation, or if you're just on the phone, you could say like, I understand, I see, okay? Then you take a deep breath through your nose and out your mouth, and then you validate her. You give a statement of validation. A statement of validation is simply identifying her emotion and then responding with the context. In that situation, I could tell she was frustrated, annoyed, and overwhelmed. And in the context of the situation was what she was basically saying. So you put those together in a sentence, and it looks like this. Man, like, I can tell you feel so overwhelmed right now because it's all on you. Or you could say, man, if that was me, I would feel annoyed too, because like, how can they put so much pressure on you and shorten the deadline? Right? So I'm responding to what she's saying and I'm identifying the emotion and I'm putting it together in a sentence, and that is how you validate. And the last thing is that you actually authentically come from a place of curiosity. Become curious and separate yourself from what's going on, right? Don't make it about you. Don't try to solve her problem, and become curious and give those statements of validation, and she'll feel emotionally connected to you. And that's what emotional competence is. All right, let's jump into the fourth principle, which is the LIL law. LIL stands for leaning into leadership. What does it mean to be a leader? Right? It is to set the path forward. And as the man, you are leading in the relationship. That is also biblical. Whether you are religious or not, you as the man are leading the marriage. The question is, why do so many men not lead? Because it's hard, right? It's not easy to lead. It is so much easier for other people to make decisions. I want you to notice how often you are just kind of laissez-faire about things. You're like, I don't really care. Now, it seems like it's not a big problem, but it's actually insidious, because you think that like, I'm just making it easy. I'm being easygoing. I'm going with the flow. But in fact, in your masculine paradigm, she needs you to take decisive action, right? She needs you to decide for her so she can relax into her feminine. And a lot of guys in our program, they say, well, my wife just naturally leads. That's just the way she is. She does so because she feels like she has to. Even if it was from her childhood, she prefers you to take and make decisions, and recognize that as a dogmatic truth. Because when you lead, right, when you take the role play of the leader, she will fall into her role as the follower. Now, there's three ways to lean into leadership. Now, the first way is to adopt the identity of a leader. Going back to the values, one of your core values should be leadership, right? Or decisive action, or whatever that value that is consistent with being a leader, with making decisions. You should start to fall in love. Say, I am a leader. I lead. Look for examples in your life where you already lead, where you got success by becoming a leader, by taking risks, by making decisions, by setting the vision and achieving goals. She loves that in you, and she wants you to do so in the context of your relationship. Now, of course, you can lead in the micro level, which means you make this daily decisive actions, whether it's like, hey, we're going to do this. I'm going to plan this trip with you. We're going to set our goals as a family together. I create a meeting once a week with my partner where we go over all our individual and relationship goals together on this sheet. And we say, hey, did you achieve your goals this week? Why or why not? What's next week's corrective action? It's almost like we're a business together, right? And of course, we have our relationship goals, which are more fun, and we connect on an emotional level. But I am leading us achieving goals together and growing together as a couple. And then on the micro scale, do you know where you want to take your life with her? Have you set the vision 5, 10, 15 years out of how you want to grow as a couple? Where you want to be? Where you want to live? What's your financial goals? What are your personal hobbies? How do you want to grow as an individual human being, right? And how do you want her to be in your life? You must set these things consistently, whether it's weekly, whether it's quarterly, yearly. On the macro level, you start to lead your relationship, because the number one thing that's going to lead you to disconnect with her is your complacency, is not growing anymore. And that's how couples grow apart, because you're going to be changing. But when you consistently lead, you're growing together in the same direction instead of growing apart. Now, before I share the last principle with you, I want to go back to the promise that I made with you about why it's so hard for people to take radical responsibility. And this is all because of the ego, right? So your ego, it doesn't want to change. You have to accept that all of the growth that you had in your life came down to risk, came down to changing who you are as a person, all right? And as you get older, it becomes harder and harder for men to change. And I don't want you to be that guy that is 60, 70 years old, filled with regret because you were too scared to lean into your fear, that you didn't have enough humility in yourself to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, you know what? I can improve. And oftentimes, us men, I get it, we want to do things ourselves, right? You find so much pride in being able to find a problem and solve it yourself. But when it comes to your relationship, it's a different skill set. And no one taught you this skill set and how to navigate relationships, especially in turbulent times. And this is why when you can fast track your way to success by getting automatic answers from blind spots that you currently have, that propels you to see the right path forward. And the best way to do this, for absolutely free, by the way, is to click the link down below instead of a free call with our marriage evaluators. On that call, we're going to evaluate your whole history of your relationship and point out the blind spots immediately and corrective action you must take to get different results. Because without different action, there is no different results. Now, I want to say before you set up that call, it's going to take you to a different page, but you must be fully invested and ready to make a change, and we will get you on that call. All right, let's jump into the last principle. I'm going to start with this quote. Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. When you're truly present with someone, you're giving them the greatest gift. Simon Weil. You know, over the past 11 years of my life, I can think of 3 people that had this skill. Just 3. Individual moments in my life when I met them for the first time, they had this skill. And the fact that I remember these people and I met them all once, but they stick to me to this day, shows the power of that skill is your presence. I remember one time I met this Buddhist monk in Balboa Park. It's the biggest park here in San Diego. And when I walked up to him, you could just feel the clarity in his eyes. First question I asked him, how often do you meditate? Because I could tell just his stability, his energy, and all this anxiety. And I wasn't that anxious. It all just melted away. It happened again with another guy that I met at a business mastermind. He sold his company for millions and millions of dollars. And he was just kind of floating around trying to find the next thing he wants to do with his life, his next purpose. And again, when I met him, I can just sense this ease of life, this calm presence in him. And there's only a few people that I met that had that presence, that calmness. But being on the receiving end of that, it is so powerful. And you know the moment where you had the most presence with her, one of the moments, it was when you were first falling in love with her and you were in the bedroom with her. You were so locked into her, so present with her in that moment. When you were in love, when you looked her in the eyes, she could feel just honestly, the God in you, right? And that's what she is just so drawn to. Because at the end of the day, I want you to think that you are just this magnetic anchor in the center of this storm, right? And whenever her emotions are going to pull her away, she's caught by everything. She's flying around in her consciousness and she can't find stability and she's emotional. She's just saying things and you look at her in the eyes and you're just there with her, unmoved, holding that love, that strength. She immediately, when she sees your soul, she relaxes. She feels safe and then she wants to lean on you. That's what attraction is. That's magnetic. Attraction is not the words you say to her. It's all, you can do all these little things to attract her, but at the end of the day, the most powerful thing that's going to draw her back in is looking at her in the eyes and maintaining calm. That she could say X, Y, and Z to you, and she could blow up, she can get upset, she could pull away, she could test as she will, and you're stable. You're good. There's so many ways you can increase that presence. Yoga, breath work, cold showers, meditation, all right? But I want you to make it a daily practice to learn how to sit in presence, to not be distracted by dopamine, scrolling, video games, addictions, overworking, TV news, all that. When you can find more presence in your life, just 5 to 10%, you'll notice the change, not just with her coming back, but people will notice it because you'll make them feel differently and you'll be a magnetic force, okay? I can't state the emphasis on how powerful this is enough. Now, if you want to watch one of the client testimonials, the full length video of this client right here, beautiful story on how he saved his marriage, I would check that out. Again, you can set up a call with our team down below by clicking the link, filling out the application. Just make sure you're fully committed. I'll see you in the next video.